Hi, everybody or anybody on Facebook. I'm Naomi Schaefer. I'm the Executive Director of Clowns Without Borders, and I am so excited to be here today with Marisol Rosa-Shapiro and Meredith Gordon, our two newest board members. I'm really excited to introduce Meredith and Marisol. Meredith, you've maybe seen on one of our past series. He's also known as Squeeze the Clown. He's a performer, writer, and leader based in Atlanta. He does incredible work with Humorology Atlanta and is also one of the co-founders of D.R.I.V.E, which is a new organization founded to raise awareness around issues of diversity in clown and arts communities. We're also here with Marisol Rosa-Shapiro, who is a performer and teacher and organizer and just a general mover and shaker. She has a really incredible view on international aid and has worked with CWB on 3 different tours. That's enough from me. So Meredith, we're gonna move to you, and this is your 30 seconds or longer to say what you want to say to introduce yourself as a board member.
Well, hi, I'm Meredith Gordon, as you said. I'm really happy to be on the board. I'm grateful for all the board members for kind of allowing me on to kind of take part in all of this. As I've often said, I've been a huge admirer of the work that Clowns Without Borders does, and I'm very grateful, I'm grateful to be here now. Late last year in December, I went on my first tour to the Bahamas for a hurricane relief tour. And, the work was basically everything I thought it would be and expected it to be, which is why I'm very eager to kind of continue to do as much of the work as I can with Clowns Without Borders. I've been a professional clown for 20 years, a professional actor for 30 or so. I started as a medical hospital clown with the Big Apple Circus 20 years ago. We've continued that work as Humorology Atlanta, and I continue to do other things with D.R.I.V.E and things of that sort. So that's the short version.
Hi. I'm Marisol. I am zooming in today from Philadelphia, which is Lenni Lenape land. Very grateful for the many, many generations of people, Lenni Lenape people, who have stewarded this land and the rivers surrounding this place for many generations. And now I get to live in this gorgeous city. I am, as you said, Naomi, a performer and a creator of original works of theater and an educator. As a result of my work in education, I've become really excited about and committed to making high quality theater work, and now some Zoom-based theater work for young people and families. And I also am a facilitator. So sometimes that takes the shape of actually sort of facilitating conversation in a verbal way, and sometimes it takes more the shape of of creating a container and setting up sort of the parameters and possibilities for folks to have conversations that range from easy to difficult. And so that's work that I'm also doing more and more of late. I am so excited to be on the board now of Clowns Without Borders. This is an organization that I really believe in, the vision and the mission and the work of. And my experiences as a part of teams on 3 projects now have been very eye-opening, transformative, and have been have just opened my eyes to some of the ways of the world, some of the best parts of humanity, and some of the challenges that I hope I personally and we in our work can help address and change. So yeah, that's it. That's my intro.
I just want to start a little bit with your work with CWB as artists, and I'd love to hear kind of a golden moment from one of your tours, something that sticks out, and maybe that you revisit. I know I'm missing performing live and having those experiences, and something that I love to do is just rekindle and revisit those experiences.
Well, one of the better memories of my experience in the Bahamas with the Clowns Without Borders was close to the end of our tour. We had been at Bahamas for about 2 weeks. The first week we were basically at a refugee camp where there were some Haitian refugees there. We worked with them the first week. The second week we went to a different island in the Bahamas and basically toured around the island and went to a bunch of schools, some medical centers, and other kind of public shows. And our last show was really very cool because that whole week we'd been touring, going to different places, a lot of schools, and we also had a couple of public shows. And so the last show we did, there were 2 kids who showed up at the show who had seen us previously. And it just so happened that it had rained that day. Because it rained, we kind of had to rearrange how we were going to do the show. We were in this relatively smaller space. And 2 of the kids popped up in the middle of our show as we were doing one of our routines. And it was a very kind of familiar and easy routine to get into, where one clown is kind of reprimanding the other clown for not doing something right. And we realized pretty quickly that the kids knew our routine. They'd seen us do it before, and they were very, very familiar with it, and they just kind of like chimed in. And so we invited them up on the stage, and they did the other half of the routine. So, as we had rehearsed it, I was reprimanding Leora because she wasn't doing something right. It was basically a version of "you can't do that here," if you're familiar with that. And she was doing things wrong, and I was coming in as the boss clown and reprimanding her. And this young little girl, who was maybe 8, had seen the show before, and she just chimed in and did the routine and did all of Leora's parts and did them perfectly and did all of the bits, and basically took me kind of getting mad at her and was perfectly silent and perfectly still and did all of the things the wrong way, exactly the way that a clown is supposed to. And then there was another young boy who chimed in and did, I believe, did Clay's part as well. And so it was really nice to have like a little bit of a community that we had over that week. We'd been there for a while, and there were people who were literally coming back because they had been, they were still suffering in many ways from the results and the devastation of the hurricane. And it was really nice to have a little bit of a community there and to just offer a little bit of levity. I know the parents really appreciated it because the parents were grateful that their kids could come in and participate in the show. And it was great just as a performer to work with a kid who had seen our show and was very eager to kind of come up on stage and participate and follow along. So that was one of the more special ones for my first tour.
The moment that comes to mind for me is not during a show, it's during a workshop. So we were working in an organization in San Antonio, Texas, that we went to primarily because it was during that period when there was a lot of attention around the large number of unaccompanied minors who are crossing the border into the U.S., from Mexico into the U.S., most of them or many of them from other countries in Central America coming up through Mexico. And so we were there, primarily to be playing for and working with those young people. And the institution, though, also was housing a smaller number of young people who, whose families had been affected by, Child Protective Services, or whatever the name of that service is in Texas. And we were doing a workshop at the time with a group of girls who were from that population. So these were not the unaccompanied minors who were actually being detained in this place. But these young kids who were sort of in transition between their family and either another family member or some other home arrangement. And we were with these young girls, and we'd been using dowels, these wooden dowels about this long, to practice some basic circus skills around like balance and attention and teamwork. And I don't know how it happened, but somehow one of the girls took two dowels and started kind of drumming with them on the floor, and one of them broke. And there was this sort of like momentary brief panic on the part of the staff at this organization, because there are a lot of rules there to keep the kids safe, and I think the staff felt like there had been a breach, right? Like, oh no, these clowns have come to help our kids and work with our kids, and now the kids have broken their thing, right? And my partners in that moment, including Leah Abel and Olivia Blair, immediately sort of jumped into, going deep into it and playing that moment for its value around, ways of finding moments of liberation in what can be very sort of constraining or oppressive circumstances. So, the little girl broke the thing, the staff was so nervous, and then we just sort of were like, yeah, everybody take your towels and like hit them on the floor and drum with them. And it became this really wonderful, cathartic, playful moment in which these kids were allowed to, engage in a sort of low stakes destruction that was a catharsis of a lot of the, constraint and just trouble that they've been experiencing, right? So it was beautiful. It felt for me like exactly what clowns should be, bringing into space, is like a playful way of breaking rules and testing boundaries and liberating oneself from like unjust and difficult circumstances. So that is a moment I will never forget.
I'd love to know what type of work you're both doing now during the pandemic, and so maybe that starts with what you used to do and how that's pivoted, because I know you're both making some really exciting work both online and also doing analog work that's not as visible right now. So Meredith, what was your performing like before March, and how has some of that shifted?
Yeah, well, COVID has obviously kind of complicated things or made a lot of things different. As I said, I was, or am still, a medical clown. I've been doing that for 20 years. And so before March, we were going to the hospitals, as we've done for many years before, and just entertaining folks in the hospitals. Obviously now with the COVID, we can't go to the hospitals. And so we've been doing a lot of virtual clowning, just like this, basically with a computer in pairs with another clown partner. And that's been a challenge, because it's an interesting kind of challenge to kind of take some of the more kind of in the same room experience and kind of translate it to this format. But that continues. I mean, we continue to find new ways of kind of make the virtual thing entertaining and work, as well as try to find other places where maybe we can use the technology to reach people that we wouldn't be able to reach otherwise if we may not be able to physically go to a facility or, someone across the country, we can reach them this way. One of the other things that I've been doing much more intensely just over the past few months is my work with several clowns, which we decided to kind of like organize, if you will, and kind of make our organization official and give ourselves a name. There were several clowns from the medical clowning world who, myself and about 5 or 6 other folks, who would basically kind of seen a lack of diversity in our work, and also a need to address more issues with the LGBTQ community. We had traded some emails and done some work kind of on a semi-regular basis over the past 2 or 3 years, when we would be at conferences or see each other. And then briefly, when COVID happened, we kind of eventually kind of got together and decided to kind of form an organization and to kind of move forward. Obviously, a lot of this was not brought on necessarily by COVID as much as it was by the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others. And we formed an organization called D.R.I.V.E, which is diversity, representation, inclusivity, voice, and equity. And so far we've done one set of workshops. We've been leading a separate set of workshops for our clown organizations, which started without us, but then we kind of segued into kind of taking over that space. And right now we're working on continuing to kind of define our mission in terms of not just for medical clowns, but possibly for other artistic organizations to kind of meet a need for diversity in the artistic world, specifically the medical clown world and the circus clowning world as well. Because there's a need, and I think not just merely a need, but I think there are a lot of opportunities that the circus world is not capitalizing on in our changing world. And I think if we can be more proactive about how we are diverse and kind of recognize those differences and do more to give folks who in many cases haven't fit in the kind of artistic mold that a lot of people have had, that there are a lot of opportunities for the work, which would be eventually would make our work much better and open up opportunities not only for those people those of us who may be diverse, but also just be better for our work, and more importantly to serve our clients, because here in Atlanta and many of our other locations, we tend to serve largely either African American, Hispanic, Black, and Brown people tend to be a pretty large portion of the people that we serve, but the teams tend to be largely non-diverse. And working within that has been a challenge, and we're trying to find ways to kind of increase the visibility and make that better for everyone. So that's pretty much that answer. I could go on, but I won't.
Oh, you'll go on, and I have more questions about that, because I think that balance of finding ways to continue artistic work in during the pandemic, while also challenging assumptions about how we make that work and who's making that work is really important. And that's I think a big moment that Clowns Without Borders is also in, is this: how do we use this time to pivot and still be reaching our audiences, but also what's the work that we need to be doing and get to be doing as an organization to increase our capacity, both in terms of reach, but also in terms of our own empathy, education, and awareness. So Marisol, now we'll go to you. The same question of what did you used to do? What do you do now? And or what are you thinking about right now?
Sure. So as a maker, the primary project I'm involved with right now is a Zoom-based interactive performance for young ones, 4-ish to 9-ish, that is called Adventure Theater Live. We've been doing it since late March or early April, I believe. And so, we've been exploring ways of engaging young people in an embodied, playful, a softly educational way, with a lot of emphasis on sort of social emotional space and learning and exploration through Adventure Theater Live, which soon will be called Adventure Players Live, in case you search for it on the internet in a couple weeks and don't find it. It's going to be called Adventure Players Live, Adventure Theater Live currently. And so we've been not only making, I'm part of the writer's room, and I've been performing and creating characters and getting really creative about, finding materials in my house that I can use to create costumes kind of like on the fly, which has been fun. So I've been doing more construction. I don't think of myself that much as an object maker or like a maker of costumes. Some people get really excited about Halloween and they go all out and they make these costumes, and that's sort of, I don't know. I don't think of it as my forte, but I've made some really cool costumes, I must say, during this time. So that's a new skill that I've been exploring, and then I'm also bridging with that project creative and administrative duties, because there are 13 of us and we all do everything. So I'm on the marketing team, and I'm contributing to like producerial conversations and visioning around like strategic planning for the company and all this kind of stuff, which is really exciting. And I helped facilitate a week-long retreat for us around like, what do we want this company to be? What does it mean to continue to develop the work with an anti-racist lens, or attempt to create an anti-racist lens for ourselves and even get on the same page about what that means? And so that's been a lot of the creative work. I've also sent over 100 pieces of mail through the USPS, many of which are handmade cards that I've made. So that's part of my single-handed attempt to keep the USPS afloat, but also, be in contact with all my friends and family in a different kind of way, which is beautiful. And then in terms of thinking broadly around, the areas in which we work, the fields in which we work, and what it means to be kind of on pause to some degree, right? Because the work we do, as Meredith was saying, is typically very, about presence and being embodied and eye contact and sharing space and a feeling of space. So similarly, a lot of the organizations I work with have been zooming out and saying, okay, when we come back from this time, and I'm quoting, I forget who, but one of my supervisors at the New Victory Theater, where I'm a teaching artist, said, when we come back from this time, we better have something to say. Like our field, specifically, the arts for young people, better have something to say. So what is it that we have to say? And now is the time to sort of observe that, think about it, crystallize it, have conversations about it, build, anti-racist lenses around that, and also broadly, focusing on belonging and inclusion and eventually equity in a real way, which is long-term work. So I've been doing that kind of work with a bunch of different organizations that I'm connected to. The one that I'm most excited about at this moment, well, I guess I'm excited about all of them, but one that is kind of like stoking my fire in a big way right now is I'm part of a 6-person group that's helping facilitate a BIPOC in TYA, which is a theater for young audiences, a BIPOC in TYA set of affinity groups. So we've got this wonderful movement of people who are making theater for young audiences in a time that feels so isolating, and in a field that can be very isolating for BIPOC folk anyway. We're taking this time to really create a space where folks can come together and speak authentically and directly and truthfully about what it is that we see, what we've experienced, what we need, what we want, how we're going to move the field forward. And TYA USA, who's created that space for us, or facilitating the space, are really making amazing moves toward work on belonging and inclusion and equity. So that is really exciting because I'm meeting all these other artists who I hope eventually will be my collaborators, my supervisors, my bosses, my cast, etc. So that's been really exciting.
Thank you. I'd love to know, since you have both talked about leadership, both of the leadership roles you're taking in these new organizations and affinity groups that you're founding, but also with Clowns Without Borders, I'd love to know kind of what either how or why you developed leadership skills, especially as an artist, because I mean, I definitely believe that those are skills that one develops, and it's really exciting to have you stepping into these roles, especially in this time that this, you know, we started looking for board members at a moment where we can't exactly say, here's what we're doing over the next year, or here's the role that we need you to do. We're asking you to come into the unknown with your full brave selves and to help lead somewhere. So I'd love to know kind of either why you want to be part of leading CWB, and also how you developed those leadership skills, and maybe that was through your arts work, or maybe that was through other parts of your work. Meredith, this will keep going my left to right.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And I think kind of pulling back, I think for me, it's really kind of all about kind of like what matters and what you do to just get stuff done. I I've been involved in, you know, different organizations and different things, and there's often a trope that is, you know, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people in some way, and I think in many instances it's a matter of like either seeing a need or recognizing that something needs to be done, or that something can be done, and then you just kind of step up and kind of go, oh, okay, well, I mean, uh, literally just what just came to my mind is John Lewis, who was a representative here in Georgia, was actually represented the district that I'm in here in Atlanta. And one of his quotes was, if you see something that needs to be changed, just like, we'll step up and say something. And for me, that's kind of what it really is about. I mean, it's culturally speaking, I think art fills a great role in kind of like shining the light where people often don't see it, and giving a voice to things that often don't get heard. And as an artist, we all kind of want to kind of perform and do our art, whatever that particular art may be. But I think for me, it always serves like a greater purpose of either connecting people, or a greater purpose of what it's saying, with Clowns Without Borders, kind of like giving people kind of a reason to kind of like smile and laugh, which might give them a reason to get out of bed the next day, broadly speaking. And for me, that's what kind of fuels it. I mean, I know like over the past 20 years, I've been doing a lot of medical clowning, and you know, when you go in and someone, a parent or a child, is genuinely grateful because you gave them, you know, a little bit of a break from whatever their otherwise not so pleasant life may be. To me, that's what inspires me. And then when I see that, and then I want to do more of it. I want to see, you know, more of the positive aspects of the work that we do happen, not just in front of me, but in other places where, you know, if I'm not directly doing it, I know that it's still happening in some way. And so for me, that's what it's really all about. It's kind of like reaching out and doing that greater good. And sometimes you might see a possibility and know how to, or at least have an idea of how to make things, make some of these ideas come into reality. And it doesn't always work. You know, sometimes if there's a lot of missteps and failure based in that. But for me, that's what it's really about. It's about trying to reach out and do good. And sometimes you kind of have to kind of go out and do the work and make the mistakes, and then next time do it again and correct those mistakes.
Thank you so much. Okay, same question, which was in fact 4 questions in my thoughts. So leadership, CWB, being an artist, or anything you choose to say.
I guess I'll zoom in on the question of like why be on the Clowns Without Borders board and why right now. you know, as I was saying before, I think that this moment, for all of the awfulness that's happening in the world and all of the like destruction and fear and loss of life and uncertainty and just what a difficult time this is, I think in some respects it not only offers but also demands of all of us that we reevaluate the way we do things, why we do them the way we do them, and just engage in a really like critical process of observing those questions. So I'm excited not only about, you know, the short term, like supporting CWB's efforts to, you know, continue to create and to serve in this moment, in this strange, you know, digital remote moment. I think that's really exciting. Like figure out what, like you said earlier, Naomi, what is clowning now on Zoom? What is it? How do we reach, you know, the folks, the communities, the communities that we would otherwise be working with all over the world in person on the ground, right? Who may or may not have access to Zoom. And so there's the short-term thinking, and then I just think it's a really exciting moment as, you know, hopefully, my hope is that this time and this sort of mass trauma that we're living through all over the world right now will lend itself to a total reimagining of our systems and how we do everything from, you know, what is clowning on a screen to what, you know, what is a nation? I mean, what is a nation? What are borders, right? Why and what are these things? And everything in between. So, so I just think it's an exciting time to be present through organizational change and mass macro change. And for me, you know, I'm doing a lot of trying to listen to where the opportunities are for me personally to serve, right? And not to make too many assumptions about what it means to serve. One of the things I love about Cons Without Borders, right, is that we don't go into a place or a situation and assume that we know the best way to be of service and to be supportive, right? We wait to be invited. So similarly, I'm kind of keeping my ear to the ground in my own personal and professional lives around like, okay, where am I being invited to serve and to be supportive? So when this opportunity arose to potentially join the board for Cons Without Borders, I was like, okay, that's a place where I'm being called to serve. So on a personal level, that's has informed my decision making, and I think it's a terrifying and exciting moment of transformation. And you know, in terms of just leadership skills, I think artists or entrepreneurs, you know, too few of us get the proper training during our artistic training to, you know, too few of us get the entrepreneurial training and the leadership training and the systems training in our artistic training, right? And so we have to kind of figure it out as we go. And so artists are all building those skills all the time, right? Because we're our own businesses and we're figuring out how to make a model that feels aligned with our ethics and our values and our artistry, but also is functional in like the society we're living in, even though we all hope for a better way, right? Yeah, I mean, thinking creatively about how to make things happen in the world, it's just, as you said, it's a skill set that artists develop, right? So, and then I've just been doing what I do for a little while, not as long as Meredith. Meredith's been doing, you know, social clowning for 20 years. I'm not there yet. But I've got a little bit of experience under my belt, and I hope that I can both, you know, offer my insights and my little tiny bit of wisdom that I have, and also learn a ton. I'm hoping to serve on the finance committee for CWB's board, because that's an area that I don't know a ton about and want to learn about, And I recognize that it's just, that's a key to like how everything functions in the world. So that's one thing I'm hoping to learn about on the board. That's it for me.
Wow. Well, I have this book called The 1 Hour Guide to Nonprofit Finances. It took me more than 1 hour to read, but I've been, looking for the person who I could give this to, who would see it as a gift and not an act of passive aggression. And maybe that's you. So get ready for some mail in the form of how to understand nonprofit finances. I need to take a little silliness break. If you're watching on Facebook Live and have any questions, please type them in the comments. And we're going to do a quick left from systems thinking to, I want to know about your clowns. So do you have a clown, and who is your clown? Meredith, who is your clown?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Someone just left their chair and is running up to get something. That's okay. My clown is a Squeeze. Squeeze is kind of like a uber personified version of me, as most clowns are in some way. My clown, at least, especially with Squeeze, I mean, Squeeze, if you go kind of like high-low status, Squeeze is high, or at least he thinks he's high. Like most high-status clowns, he thinks he's really smart, but he's not as smart as he thinks he is, and often ends up, not understanding anything. But that's, I try to stay. At least start from a high place. More specifically, a lot of my work has always been in the hospital, but primarily in the hospital, and we always work in pairs. And so I always tend to think of my character, my clown, as being a very high status clown, but at times I can be stupid. I do a lot of music. I do a lot of juggling. I do a little bit of magic, but I've learned over time that all of those skills are cool to have, but just like kind of like a ninja or someone who's kind of like a 100-degree black belt, it's like they don't go around always beating people up. They know they can, but they don't have to. And so what I've learned is that my best tool, or my number one tool to work with, is my partner. And so whatever I can develop in that relationship with my partner, and by extension, the audience, in the same way that the story I told you about the girl and boy in the Bahamas, that for me, that's ideal. I mean, when I'm literally performing with the audience and they're either with them in their seats or if they come up on stage, to me, that's what it's all about. I find myself, especially in my performances, trying to give as much space as possible so that the audience knows that at any point, I want them to kind of tell me what they think. I want them to be involved. I want to invite them in to hear what they have to say and to have them to be a part of it. Because for me, the performance isn't merely me performing for them as much as it is a mutual experience. And if we can have that mutual experience together, then that's just kind of like icing on the cake. So I try to use any of the skills that I have with these things back here. They're kind of cool, but as much as possible, I try to make sure that the audience is joining me and playing along with me as well as with my partner.
Awesome. Okay, are you back? Okay. Tell us about your clown.
I ran away to get some show and tell items. So my primary clown, her name is Princess Mildred. She very much likes being princess. She doesn't love Mildred, being called Mildred. I'm excited, Meredith, to hear that your clown is also a high status clown, because Mildred is too. So it'd be really exciting to get them together, see how they play together. So Princess Mildred, in a nutshell, is this little crown. So very pink and girly and very cute, which, you know, was never a part of myself that I was like so aware of, this pinkness. But now that I know Princess Mildred, I sometimes like shop for things for her that are pink. And then this. So these are my shoes. Every pair of shoes that I've worn as Princess Mildred has physically fallen apart. Like the sole has just like fallen off the shoe. So that now is just part of the aesthetic. And she's a very like pink, sort of fluffy princess, and very like sort of, in some ways very like grounded and rather bossy, which I use not as a derogatory term, but as like she's empowered, right? She's just boss, and quite flirtatious. The skill, I mean, besides the general clowning skills like Meredith was talking about around listening and contact and vulnerability and being responsive, besides those clowning skills sort of in general, the skill of mine as a performer that Princess Mildred really capitalizes on is mime. The show that I've made with Princess Mildred, the whole show fits in a suitcase, and basically it's just me and a suitcase, and I premiered it in like a storefront, empty storefront, and I've mostly done it in sort of empty storefront or black box spaces with nothing. I mean, maybe basic lighting. You know, when it was really turbocharged, there were like a few, like maybe one sound cue. It's just a show that I can do anywhere, really. I mean, it's written to be performed in an indoor kind of space of some kind. But so the whole world, she creates the whole world through mime, just through, you know, projection and suggestion of things in the space. And the show is really constructed to, I mean, when I do the Princess Mildred, you know, solo show that I do, it's all about getting the audience of adults, usually of adults, to play, to mime themselves, to play pretend, to build the world with me or with her. So that's my ulterior motive, really, is just to get everybody in the audience to play like kids and to share in that experience and to know that their presence in the room, every single person's presence in the room is necessary and has an impact on the storytelling. And it's a form of like, you know, community building and yeah, just getting adults to be silly together. Yeah, that's Princess Mildred. She's fun. I actually woke up yesterday. I was like, oh, I really miss her. Like I was kind of feeling a little Mildred-y yesterday for whatever reason when I woke up. So it might be time to, you know, tie the boots on and get out on the street as Mildred and see how she responds to the COVID world.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how you use your new costume building skills to make her a mask. And I want to know if that's going to be very pink or very duct tapey. I can't wait. Thank you both so much. We're really excited to have you on the board. I think that's it. I feel like that was a really exciting place to either end or begin this conversation.